Now I'm just trying to get some understanding. And no, I'm not a scientist, no, I'm not a theologist, no, any other type of specialist in the field. Yeah, just an ordinary individual. Just like any other ordinary individuals, I can honestly say, without pause, I do not know everything. I'm not a know-it-all. Now, it is a common conception that God is almighty, and that all things come into existence and transpire according to God's will. Now, running parallel to that train of thought is that God has delegated to us human beings a certain degree of freedom which enables us to consciously deliberate upon certain alternatives to derive at rational decisions based upon our current level of understanding. Now, from this line of reasoning, develop the notion of free will. Controversially, however, would not perchance this ability to choose be better understood as an illusion of making a choice? Because is not whatever choice we make a choice that God not only knew that we would make given the circumstances that we may at present find ourselves, but is also the agent through which we are enabled to make that choice? Is not whatever decision God makes for the direction of our thoughts and our actions the final word on such matters? Now, we all have thoughts, but where do they come from? Why do we think the way we do and about the things that we think about? And now to say that one comes up with the thought, or that, that one thinks a certain thought and performs a particular action simply because one willed it, seems equivalent to saying that one is the reason that the world spins seamlessly about its axis. Purely fallacious. Now, to say that God is almighty and makes all things happen, and in the same breath say that we humans, one of God's creations, has the power to make a choice that trumps God's choice, or a choice that opposes God's choice, seems to be a contradiction that denies the supreme and infallible nature of the almighty entity. And furthermore, by saying that the choices we make are going against the will of God and thereby advancing us on the path to eternal damnation, seems quite barbaric. It is a predicated doctrine that human beings were created and fashioned in the image and likeness of God. Yet, many scholars have been known to assert that it is in human nature to be evil or to propagate evil. Now, if that assertion is held to be true, then would not that predisposition stem from the seed of which we sprang? And also, how can hearkening unto our own will, a freedom that has also been predicated to have been granted to us through the will of God, be going against God's will, if it was God's will for us to follow our will freely? And it's not to say that the decisions that we think we are making does not have ramifications upon the rest of creation, for that would be egotistical ignorance. Contrarily, every action that is made does indeed have ramifications upon the rest of creation, and as the alleged arbiter of such actions, one would have to bear responsibility for that action and absorb its consequences, whether deemed as good or as evil. Well, why would one have to take responsibility for something that they had no control over in the first place? It's a credible argument. Well, what seems to be the case is simply that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And even the decisions that God makes are subject to that law, because that is the way the Almighty Creator designed the system. Now, the reaction may not be perceived immediately. It may take days or even several years to be comprehended, because in order to be fully understood, the action has to work through the entire system. And because we exist in a continuum, would not perchance what we experience today be the effects of things that have been in operation since before discernible history? And although we may never, within the finite time that we have in this current state of consciousness, be able to discern the first cause, it seems quite assuring to know that whatever transpires is not in our hands, but rather in the hands of the Almighty Creator, that alone holds the master plan, a plan that is executed flawlessly through the Almighty's will. And like I said, I'm just trying to get some understanding. Now, if anybody has some insights on such matters, please, by all means, don't be a hoarder of such knowledge. Share it with the rest of the community.